Hey guys, the name is Kris Barocsi. Welcome to Comment Time 16. This is my Q&A series, and actually I'm really looking forward to this one because it's been like 2 months since I recorded the last Comment Time video. We'll get into the first question right away, and you guys are just killing it in the comment section. I love seeing all the questions and all the additional infos you have to my videos, where obviously I will forget stuff. So it's so cool to have this sort of back and forth in the comment sections. Let me grab the opportunity to remind you to please write your comments and questions in YouTube comment sections, like right under this video, because I get all these like private messages and all the questions on Instagram and Facebook and everything, and all these message requests. These boxes are full, and I just cannot start going through all that because it takes so much time to concentrate simultaneously on YouTube comment sections, Instagram message requests, Facebook the same thing, etc. It's just so much time, and I would rather invest all the time in making videos for you. So if there's a chance to ask your questions under YouTube videos in the comment section on YouTube, that would be awesome, and I promise I'll come back to you as fast as I can. First question is from Emmanuel Sereni. Many compliments, great tones. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. This came under the UAFX Golden Reverb video. Could you tell us something about the configuration you're actually using in this video on aux? Thanks. So, in the aux box itself, I almost always use the same 2x12 Anico speaker loaded cabinet simulation with 2 microphones, and I can put it on screen somewhere like right here. Before I dig in too deep, just for you guys who are not familiar with the aux box, what it does, it's basically a load box, so you can use it right after your tube amplifier instead of using a cabinet. Right? Because you have to connect your amp to a cabinet or any sort of load, otherwise you will ruin the power amp section and the power tubes for sure. First of all, the aux box is a load box, and then I'm using the cabinet and microphone simulation built in. I tweaked it, and I'm really happy with the sound, so that's cool. From there, I could go with 2 TRS jacks because it has 2 outputs, stereo left and right. I could go straight into my interface to record all my sounds. But since the Golden Reverberator, the UAFX Reverb, is a stereo pedal, I thought, why not using it in stereo, but without using actually 2 amps? I wanted to keep the rig simple because this way most of us players can sort of identify himself with the tone I'm getting on the channel or in the video, because not many people run 2 amps at the same time. Even though it's awesome, it's just more to carry, more to buy, and needs more space, and it's more realistic to use just 1 amp. But still, I wanted to use the stereo reverb of the pedal. So that's why I went from guitar to pedalboard into 1 amp, my rev. Then from the rev, I went into the aux box for load box, cab simulation, and mic simulation. And from the aux box, I went into the UAFX Golden, right? Stereo input. And then from the stereo output, I went into the interface and then a computer to record the sound. It sounds a little complicated, but it's actually really simple. You just need 2 more cables, and that's it. Raw Guitar Vibes wrote a comment under the 5 things you need to know about Humbucker's video. Well done. The only thing I'm missing are some words about spacing 50mm versus 53mm. So this is about the string spacing at the bridge. on Gibson guitars and other traditional fixed bridge type guitars, you will see this narrower string spacing, which means that the sixth and the first string are around 50 millimeters away from each other, right? So that's how most original like PAF style humbuckers are being built, with this narrower spacing. But then, since we also want humbuckers in Fenders and Super Strats and modern guitars and whatever, those will mainly have a wider string spacing, right? Because all these tremolos and traditional, because of Fender, who chose a wider string spacing, these humbuckers sort of appeared, which are called F-spaced or Trembucker, depending on the brand. These will have a wider spacing, so the pole pieces will be a little bit wider spread apart. Now this is a really interesting subject, because if you want to be super exact, you should of course pay attention to the string spacing of your guitar and choose your humbucker accordingly. This is mainly about the bridge humbuckers, by the way. Neck humbuckers are pretty much always the same. I totally understand if someone's very picky about this and would never accept like a traditional spaced, narrower spaced humbucker in an F-spaced guitar, even though I gotta say, I never ever heard a big difference. I had a guitar where I had an F-spaced pickup in it, and I got another humbucker which was narrower, so the pole pieces were narrow together, and I put the pickup in, and I had zero issues with the first and the sixth string being too quiet. If you're just worried about the tone, whatever. I mean, take a look at Eddie Van Halen. He put a Gibson PAF pickup, which was obviously not F-spaced, so it had the narrow spacing, and put it in a self-built guitar, the Frankenstein, and it sounds pretty damn awesome. And he even put the pickup like offset. It wasn't straight in the guitar, right? So it was all wrong, and it just worked perfectly. Next one's really interesting. This came from Donald Parker under the humbucker pickup, the 5 things about humbuckers. I'm curious about the science behind the difference in sound between a pickup before and after wax potting. I'm not disputing your claim, but I can't say I've noticed it in a pickup I potted myself to get rid of annoying microphonic squeals. My assumption before your video was that the pickup sound is all about electrical magnetic properties, strings, windings, wire, magnets, etc. Given that wax is not non-conductive, non-magnetic, and not really even in the space between the strings and the magnets, what could explain a difference in frequency response? I can tell 2 things for sure. First of all, there is a difference between potted and non-potted pickups. And I only know that because I've heard that, so my ears told me what's up. I was not paying attention to what people say, which should be better, which I should like more or not. There is just a difference. And second thing is, wax is obviously non-conductive and non-magnetic. That's for sure. But a pickup that's slightly microphonic will sound different because it also works or acts like an actual microphone. If you scream into a pickup that's microphonic, you will hear your voice through the amp. And you go ahead and try it out. It's funny. You will actually hear more of the acoustic sound of the guitar too, compared to a wax-potted one. So that's why obviously wax-potted pickups will not take any acoustic signal at all, only magnetic. And that's the main difference. That's why wax-potted pickups will just sound different, not worse, just different than non-wax potted and slightly microphonic pickups. The humbuckers in my Les Paul right here are not wax potted and they are slightly microphonic. If I knock on them, you can hear it, like clearly hear it. So you have to play these pickups differently, and there are some drawbacks. What I love about these pickups in the guitar is that it gives this super percussive, open, clear tone, and that's something that I mainly got from non-potted pickups, and that's why I tend to stick to them. Crazy Wisdom 2 had 2 questions about my Tele. This came under my the best Telecaster ever, my #1 guitar video. What does the Tele weigh and your thoughts on it? The guitar, this guy, weighs 3.2 kilos, which I'll put it on screen in pounds. I don't know. It's just a really nice lightweight guitar. It's not ridiculously light. It's not like it was a hollow body or whatever, but it weighs nothing for a solid body. And especially for an ash guitar. This is not swamp ash. This is just a selected, like weight selected 2-piece ash body and a maple neck. This is clearly my favorite weight class for Fender guitars like Strats and Teles and whatever, because they just feel very light already, but it's not like a toy, not like super, super light. They're not neck heavy. There's no neck dive because the body is still heavier than the neck. So it's like a perfect balance. Very comfortable to play. I can easily play a really long show, like 3 or 4 sets with this guitar without any issues with like shoulder or whatever, even though I'm not, not 18 or whatever. We could of course also get into the tone, what changes if a guitar is heavy or not. And I also have a theory on this, but hey, wood doesn't matter, right? Long story short, the weight of the guitar seems to change the tone of the guitar. Not by a mile. We're talking about nuances, of course, and one will prefer heavy guitars because they sound a certain way, and one will prefer lighter guitars because of the weight, obviously, and also because they just sound and, vibrate differently. I always found it really interesting how come metal players and heavy rock and whatever, high gain players prefer heavy Les Pauls. All I can say is that all of the really heavy Les Pauls I played were brutally tight. Like if you play them high gain, it's just mean. It sounds more modern than most modern guitars, and it's just insane. But it's how it is. I had this 94 Les Paul Standard, which weighed 5.5 kilos. Again, it's gonna be in pounds somewhere here. Super heavy guitar. Like it broke my shoulder off, and it was just the tightest, coolest guitar for really heavy chugging. It's insane. The same thing occurs to all the other Les Pauls I played. Like I had a couple of 70s Les Pauls in my hands in the Thomann workshop to just set them up and repair small things. And 1 or 2 were like super heavy, and I of course couldn't resist. Played some stuff on it. It was nice for blues and classic rock, but it really shined as soon as I went insane on the amp and just went for a little chugging. Okay, I love this next one. It's from Chiron, and this came under my Which Cable Kills the Tone video, where I compared a couple of cables from really affordable to really expensive. There is no significant difference between all these cables. If you're really serious about sound, get an amp that has treble, bass, and distortion controls. This is how I see it. Being serious about your tone has nothing to do with the amount of controls and knobs and switches on your rig, whether it's a pedal board, an amp, your guitar, whatever it is. That has to do something with versatility. If you're serious about tone, I think the most important part is to pay attention to each and every component on your guitar, your cable, your pedal board if you're using any, your amp, even your speaker cable, and of course the speaker, the housing of the cabinet of your guitar cab, everything. That's how you can be sure to eliminate everything in your signal chain that's sucking tone or changes the tone in a way you don't want it to be changed. A very, very simple rig, an old, I don't know, Fender amp cranked and just a guitar with one cable can sound insanely good. And a rig with an amp with 6 channels and, I don't know, MIDI controllable, blah, 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 everything can sound really nah if components are just killing your tone. So that's what you're talking about in my book is versatility. It's not the tonal quality. I'm guessing what you mean by saying this is that you can get away with using a really affordable cable. Doesn't really matter, because if you have an amp that can change the EQ and recover some distortion in case the cable sucked out some signal, then you're good, because you can fix it in the mix. If you lose something, frequencies, dynamic range, anything on the way, you cannot recover it. You can cover it up and you can make people think that it's not there. Like, your audience will probably not hear difference if you use a cheaper cable and recover all the loss on your amp, because it will sound very similar. Like the EQ curve might look almost the same, but the playing feel will be very different. So you can be one of those players who I admire, who just don't give a damn about this and play the same great whatever the rig is and however the dynamic range is. Or you can be one of those who immediately feel it and don't feel comfortable if it's just somehow too slow. The tone is just sort of not really coming immediately out of the speaker, or somehow it just always sounds like you had your tone on the guitar on, I don't know, 5 or 6, and you just want to turn it up because it sounds too dull. And that's only because the cable just killed those frequencies. You can, of course, try to recover it as told, but it's just not as natural. I mean, an EQ pedal can do wonders in an amp's effects loop and such, like right before the power section, but it's just such a different playing experience. The next one came from Frank McHale. McHale? This came under my Boss OD1 versus SD1 versus OD1X video. I had some really interesting comments on their video. We'll talk about it in a sec, but let me read a comment first. Great video. Thank you so much, Frank. Demoing pedals in the context of a band mix is what is missing from 99% of YouTube demos. How many of us have invested time and money into pedals that sounded great on their own, only to find it's completely lost in a band mix? So true. That's exactly the reason why I did the band mix part in that video. Great demo that should be a reminder to us all that you don't need to spend ridiculous amounts of cash on boutique pedals to get a classic OD sound, except if you're trying to source an original OD1. It's about time Boss did a Vaza reissue of the OD1. Thanks so much, Frank. I'm really happy that you like the band mix part. That's something that I try to put in most of my videos, especially if it's a demo of like an overdrive. Let me tell you a short story. And this is also my reaction / answer to all those who criticize the tones I got with these 3 pedals. There were a couple of people who wrote like, none of these were great. The OD1 was just annoying. The others sounded plasticky. So I totally get it. And I shared your opinion for so many years. And here's the story. And this is interesting. We had this event called Thoman's Gearhead University a couple of years ago before the pandemic. So 2019, 2018, etc. And we had like a jam evening. Okay, so we had all these guitar players, YouTubers, brands, whatever, and we had this party which was on a stage and everyone was having a good time and drinks and dancing, whatever. So it was a really nice evening, and we had to put together a couple of boards, right? So 1 for the bass player and 2 for the 2 guitar player positions where people just went on stage and swapped positions and everything. And Boss was also one of the brands who was involved in this event. So we also used Boss pedals, of course. And there was this board with the blues driver, the blue one, and the SD1 on the same board. Like one more mid-rangey, other more scooped and more amp-like. And before, like when we did sound check, I thought, oh yeah, the SD1, it's just too plasticky, too mid-rangey. I think I'll stick, in case I play, I'll stick to the blues driver. And then later I went on stage and turned on the blues driver and I was like, I cannot hear myself. What is going on? Kept on turning the pedal up higher and higher. And I was like, come on, where is the guitar in the mix? And then I stepped over to the SD1 and I was like, okay, that works. Even though I'm also not the biggest fan of the SD1, OD1 kind of tone in isolation, this is the kind of pedal that will punch you right through the mix. You will hear yourself, everyone else will hear you, and it will not sound too crazy trebly, it will not sound annoying. It's just a fantastic pedal type. So that's very important, and that's why I wanted to connect this little story and explanation to Frank's comment. And the last comment is from Chris Davies. What's so special about Fishman Fluence pickups? I kind of understand the question because you hear about these Fluence pickups all over the place. It's like, here's a new signature pickup, here's a new artist, here's one more, and this next brand uses Fluence pickups, and this brand now also, and like everyone seems to use them and whatever. So it's a little bit like annoying, almost like, what the hell is going on? Why is that so cool? Their design is, well, basically revolutionary, because the first time in history someone made non-traditional guitar pickups sound at least as good as the traditional ones. There are of course different methods and crazy designs and whatever, but for most players those are just a little too funky and don't sound right or don't react right to certain things. And Fishman made the Fluence sound at least as good as like normal passives and other actives and whatever. And they use circuit boards. These are stacked circuit boards on top of each other instead of having like the coils and the wire and whatever. So it still has a magnet, but it has circuit boards. What the positive thing about this is that they can make sure that each and every pickup will sound absolutely identical. That's never the case with traditional pickups, even if it's machine wound. I totally get it that this brand will say, if we can make these pickups sound absolutely identical, why not doing it? And I also get if a guitar player will say like, I want to know what I'm buying. A traditional pickup, as told, will slightly be different each and every time. Hand-wound pickups even more so. If you don't want that kind of rock and roll mojo, we'll see what I'll get if I buy one kind of vibes, I totally get it that you say like, well, Fishman, those pickups will sound identical. I know what I pay for, so I'll go for that. And it's also important to say that because of this circuit board kind of design, they can tweak the tone of the pickup way more. Like they can sort of program it to sound a certain way, and they can really do whatever you want. This is also the reason why so many artists decided to get a signature set, pickup set, because they can just go there and sit down with a guitar and create a signature pickup on the fly. Like, it's a very different experience than let's wind a new pickup. Okay, how does this sound? I love new technology and interesting new things. I highly respect them. Everything that makes sense and that works. If we're talking about the style of music I prefer playing and it inspires me, that's gonna be perfectly okay with traditional passive pickups. So I'll just stick to them. But still, I have to say that I really appreciate these pickups existing because it moves forward something that's been the same from day one. Talking about magnetic normal standard pickups has been revolutionized without sounding weird or wrong or whatever. It makes all the sense. So I kind of find that cool. Alrighty, you guys take it easy. See you down there in the comment section. If you have any questions or anything you want to add to my answers or just a critique, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, next Thursday in a new video. I'll be back. Bye bye.